Porsche took some pretty big decisions about 18 months ago when it launched the current 992 generation 911 GT3. It took some pretty big risks as well in order to allow this extra special sports car to just keep getting better, to keep developing, getting faster, more exciting. They paid off, of course. It's Autocar's reigning best driver's car of 2021, but in some ways it's more like a GT3 RS than any regular GT3 has ever been. So today's question is, where does the fast 911 go from here? This is where. Meet the new 911 GT3 RS. Easily the most aggressive looking road legal factory 911 that there has ever been. This is the latest in Porsche's famous lineage of RS models. And, as you might well have guessed on account of all those fins, vents and canards, it deals in aerodynamics unlike any 911 before it. The 992 RS follows the established recipe for a racing sport 911 up to a point. Unlike the regular GT3, it uses the ultra-wide body of the 911 Turbo and runs with wider axle tracks and wider wheels than its lesser sibling as well. Its suspension springs are 50% higher than of a GT3, and it has new carbon fibre composite anti-roll bars and adjustable ride height and wheel camber. The GT3's 4-litre flat-six engine has new camshafts and lubrication measures for its application here too, and develops marginally more power and a broader spread of torque than it does in standard trim, but only just. Meanwhile, while the RS uses even more lightweight carbon fibre composite body panels than we've seen on any fast 911 hitherto, as well as lightweight glazing and a pared down cabin spec, it still weighs marginally more than a regular GT3. You can blame the wider chassis and axles for that. But then there's the aero. Downforce is what this car is really all about. The RS's huge carbon fibre composite rear wing is 40% larger than is a GT3's, and it also sits much higher in the airflow, so it works more effectively. It has huge canards on its flanks and even fins on its roof to help evacuate hot air from key places and direct cooler air into others. The car's radiator concept has been redesigned in order to make room for active aerodynamic flaps under the front bumper, which balance out the massive downforce from that rear wing. And so, altogether, and when it's set at its most aggressive, the GT3 RS can develop some 860 kilos of downforce when travelling at just under 180 miles an hour. That's more than Porsche's junior 911 racing cars, and even more than the outlandish McLaren Senna managed. And then, at the press of a button on the steering wheel, you can turn it all off as part of a drag reduction feature, or simply let the car decide for itself, based on lateral loading and throttle position, when it needs to stick to the track and when it can whiz through the air so much more cleanly. Right folks, here we are. This is the new 911 GT3 RS, no less. We've got a nice damp day in September at Silverstone, which I'm sure is not what Porsche ordered, but there you go, it's what we've got. There isn't any standing water, they tell me, so that's nice. The car's on its standard fit Cup tyres, not the Cup 2Rs, which, according to my experience, would make it even more of a handful in these conditions, so we can be glad about that. So let's find out what this totally unhinged new 911 is all about. Oh. Yep, plenty of noise, plenty of pace. I have to say, I did find full throttle there. It doesn't feel like another leap beyond a GT3 in terms of straight line speed. You wouldn't expect it to. There's only that 15 horsepower extra. There's quite a lot more torque than that would suggest. They say the torque curve is filled out quite nicely from about 6,000 RPM, but of course there's the shorter gearing as well, but it doesn't feel a lot faster than a GT3 in a straight line. Which isn't to say it doesn't feel fast. Right, cops, fast corner, fourth gear, not very fast today I have to admit, but it goes through there really nicely and down into Maggots Beckett's. Wow. Okay, so there's a bit of a twitch to the handling response. I guess you'd expect that. The wider tracks, the stiffer springs. It's definitely pointier. I'm sure it has a lot more mechanical grip than a GT3. But it's going to keep you honest, because it wants to get into the corner and get on with life. Okay. Stow, Again, plenty of grip there. But now we're down into the complex before the Hamilton straight. This is slower. Yeah, and now we begin to see the cup tyre just struggling a little bit with the wet surface. Suddenly, when the aero load comes off this car, in these conditions, it starts to feel a little bit more of a handful. And then here at Abbey, the aero's working. It's just got loads of grip. So the other thing to talk about is this whizzy new 4-controller HMI system for the adaptive dampers and the adaptive diff and the traction control. It's all operated by these 4 dials. So you can stick it in track mode and then you can just tweak away to your heart's content as you go around the circuit. So you can go, right, okay, I fancy a bit more compression damping on the front axle for this corner. I fancy a bit less overrun lockup on the diff for the tighter one. So maybe I'll get a bit more adjustability out of the handling of the car. You can tighten down or loosen up the traction control. I'll be honest, in these conditions, I'm going to leave it set as the racing drivers, Porsche's racing drivers, say it's best to be left, because they've been driving this car around here for days. They probably know. I think they've got the compression damping turned down a little bit, but they've left the overrun diff settings quite high, so the car is stable on turn in, finds plenty of grip on the way out, and it isn't so firm on the damping that it struggles to make the tyres work in these conditions. Obviously today, this isn't how you would choose to show off a car like this if you're Porsche. It's probably not how you would choose to drive it if it was yours. In dry conditions, God, this thing must be absolutely monumentally good. Even with the tyres warming up now, it's doing really well. I love it. Okay, so this is run number 2 in the GT3 RS. I was hoping very much over my lunch that the Northamptonshire weather gods would be kind and it would dry out, and then it rained again. But never mind. We can learn something at least about this car. Now, we talked already about the performance level, which is kind of broadly the same as the GT3. The handling balance is certainly pointier. It's got a real front end on it, as GT3 RSs always have had. But the aero is mighty. You know, on a dry day on the track, I would imagine, especially on those Cup R tyres, you would be really attacking braking zones and carrying apex speed in a way you just couldn't do in a GT3, a regular GT3, or a lot of other quite serious track day cars. You know, that 860 kilograms of downforce at, you know, 170, what is it, 7 miles an hour, that's huge. That's like McLaren Senna level. And it would make an enormous difference when this car was really on song. Today, yeah, you just can't get the confidence. You're not sure enough about the grip level. The track isn't dry enough and the tyres aren't switched on. But what we can do is have a little play with this 4-rotor adjustment for the car's various adaptive systems, the dampers, the diff, the traction control. I think I'm going to leave the ESC on, just so that if I do the wrong thing, I don't go backwards into the tyres at speed. But here we are, we're coming down towards Magus Beckett's. I'm going to turn the front compression down a couple of notches and the rear. So the dampers are now a little softer than they were. Can you feel the difference? Yeah, maybe. Porsche had them set deliberately soft on the compression for the wet conditions. And that little bit of body movement definitely helps the tyre to warm up and create that mechanical grip. Right, down here, into Stowe. Tricky corner, bit conservative with the speed. Oh, tell you what, you can feel the instant the front end starts to run out of grip and run wide, you just know about it almost telepathically. I know that's a massive cliche, but this car just communicates really well. So even when the tyres aren't working, you know exactly where you are with it. Right, full power down the Hamilton straight, and then Abbey, quite a scary corner, some braking. Bloke in the GT3 ahead is having to work a lot harder than me to carry the same speed. That makes sense, he hasn't got the aero that I've got. And then when you slow down to these sort of 50-60 miles an hour corners through the farm complex, all of that aero grip just ebbs away and the car starts to move around. Oh, it's good. I mean, I don't know how much more I'd be raving about it right now if this had been a better day, a drier day. Quite a lot, I suspect. That level of downforce on a road car is a very rare thing, and a 911, which we already know, handles supremely well. Crikey, heaven knows what it would be like. But even on a day like today, you know, I think it's an enormous compliment to this car that a bloke like me, no hero driver by any means, can just hop in it, in the wet, and then be all over the back wheels of an experienced instructor in a GT3. It's basically what's happening. You know, you've got all the aero grip in this car, he has got half as much, and we have all the drivability that we need to give him a headache. There we go. That's it for today, I'm afraid, boys and girls. That is all of the time we've got. Here's to another day, in the dry hopefully, with what I'm sure is a truly amazing car. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.